AI isn't replacing leaders. I mean, that's the thing people need to understand. It's revealing them. If I, as a leader, can go and find information and the execution of any plan I have is a lot easier, what matters the most is the judgment I put into that. So you're taking away a lot of this mechanical work that's not necessarily useful, and you're really relying now on people's judgment and their acumen and what's human about that side of it to be successful, and that's hard for a lot of people.
Today, we're speaking with Jane Williams, a former CIO turned executive coach who spent 20 years leading global virtual teams at IBM before building her own coaching practice focused on IT executives. She holds a doctorate in leadership of remote teams and has created a systematic approach to helping technical leaders navigate the invisible challenges of executive presence and career advancement, which is exactly the kind of structured, non-hustle approach our audience needs to hear about building a coaching business in a specific niche. You became a coach to help people, but no one told you how to build the business behind it. Welcome to Coach's Entrepreneur, the show for coaches building real businesses with systems, strategy, and heart. Build the systems, serve your clients, and support your family. Jane, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. This is an exciting opportunity to talk.
Our first conversation, I think I just had so much fun speaking with you. I'm really excited for this conversation. You've had a really interesting experience in business IT. And I think right now, because you were working with IBM, and IBM came out with Watson and was kind of at the forefront of AI. And right now, we're hitting this point in history where so many people are interacting with it, right? I'm interested. What are your thoughts about where we are today with AI and with coaching and anyways, I'd love to
Where's it
hear.
all going, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's really, really fascinating. I mean, you brought up the Watson experience. I was back in IBM when that was first coming out, when they were first doing the trials. Everybody who was in a profession had to actually sit there and do duty teaching Watson their domain. These things, everybody assumes that an AI just is sprung up and boom, it knows everything. But no, you have to teach these things. You have to you have to breathe life into them, so they know what to do. So it's not just it's a lot of work. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of hard, tedious work. But once you've got it going, it's fantastic. So what we see now today is something that's absolutely, I am so focused on technology that's useful.
Mhm.
And, technology for the sake of technology, okay, so what? But AI, to me, it has become so useful and so prevalent. You mentioned before we were talking here is how prevalent everything is now. Before it was just in the realm of people who, had the money or tools or were smart enough to do it. But now anybody can interact with AI. And I just see it helping in so many ways. I mean, it's just fantastic. But the way it's changed, I think the way it changes leaders and the people that I talk to in coaching, I think is going to be very profound.
Right now, there's a lot of talk about, AI taking people's jobs. How do you build in resilience for all the AI tools? And where do you see the people you work with, specifically because you're talking with IT executives, right? What are they concerned about and what are they trying to work on for themselves in this future?
That's a fascinating question. I think I can see a lot of people who are terrified. I get that. Change is terrifying. That's happened to any job you're in. Those people will be left by the side of the road, I believe. People who can't make a change and look at what's really there and understand it for what it really is and how I can use it rather than being afraid of it. But really, it's just, AI isn't replacing leaders. I mean, that's the thing people need to understand. It's revealing them. If I, as a leader, can go and find information and the execution of any plan I have is a lot easier, what matters the most is the judgment I put into that. So you're taking away a lot of this mechanical work that's not necessarily useful, and you're really relying now on people's judgment and their acumen and what's human about that side of it to be successful, and that's hard for a lot of people.
Yeah. How do you train somebody for that? Like, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. The output is nuanced, right? You have to look
Yeah.
at all the different variables, and then you have to have pushed yourself to learn and experience things to understand how do you react in this situation? How do you take that? So it's
Yeah.
a lot harder.
It's harder in some ways, but when you look at Take a technology, and when you see that it's useful and you understand, oh my gosh, there's a rare ability that some people have. And I think a lot of technologists are that way. When they see a new technology, their mind instantly explodes with all the possibilities. Some people, their mind constricts and gets smaller.
Yeah.
But when you look at the possibilities to one of the things I talk with my leaders about so much, and this is really, really common in IT, is they know everything there is to know about technology. They are great technologists. They can do product, they can do anything, but they don't understand the business they support. So, what better way to help you understand that than have an AI agent that can go out there and help you with information like that? Like, what's the competition? What's my business really like? Things that you wouldn't really be all that. Some people are scared to go tell a boss that I don't know this about my company. So, go out and find it. And the ability to manage your own self using these tools is just phenomenal.
I think it really is for the person who is self-motivated enough to learn how to use it and to go and find the information. I think it's your superpower.
To learn how to use it wisely. That's you're not going to get that from an AI.
Well, maybe in the future. But yeah, yeah, I agree. Because like anybody can use a hammer, right? But if how are you using it effectively, efficiently? Like if you never no one ever showed you how to use the hammer to hit that nail with the head, you might use the bottom of it, right? So, I feel like a lot of people who are playing with AI today don't really know how to use it effectively, and they're just using the handle to hit the nail, right?
Well, that's interesting. That's a great analogy. How would you fix that?
I mean, it's actually something I think about with my son too, because right now, a lot of concern right now with AI and students has been like they're not thinking for themselves, they're not writing their own homework. Some kids, because of COVID, they didn't really learn how to read well, right? So there's a lot of problems coming into this explosion of AI tools and accessibility. And so right now, it only gets grows if you just use AI to think for yourself, right? So for my son, what I tell him to do is AI can think for you, but if you let AI think for you, that's brain rot, right? Like all the kids, brain rot. And you're just everything you produce is going to be just AI garbage. I tell him like if you want to be stuck with everybody, the majority of people, because most that's how most people are using it, this is what's going to happen to you. This is what research is saying, right? Because there's already research out on this stuff and it's not great. And so, what I've been telling him to do is don't use AI to do the work for you. Use AI to help you do your work better, to think better, to do it faster. And so, actually, I built a writing app for him. It reads his
Right.
writing and it analyzes it and it tells him, okay, this is good, this is bad, this is how you can improve. And simple things like grammar mistakes or punctuation, like that, that'll just tell them, okay, these are things that were just done wrong. This is how you should have written it. But in terms of like logic, consistency, flow, it'll actually say, actually, you should do these things better.
That's really interesting. I have taught online for a long time and I've seen that evolve. And the
Mhm.
reason I was so into it, I was so dissatisfied with traditional education. The sage on the stage, somebody standing up preaching at you, and it doesn't work anymore. And like you said, using the AI in an interactive way to learn is just fantastic. I had students who turn in AI papers all the time, and it's like, okay, you're an MBA student. You're paying money for this MBA. Now, I will freely admit that I bought all my COBOL programs back in 1980 when I had to do those. If you're going to cheat, you're going to cheat. And if the education is of no value to you, you're going to treat it that way. So, and where are you going to be in the end? What you're learning is reasoning. You're not learning so much the rote things, but you're learning the reasoning skills, the ability to act as an intelligent human being in the world. And if you rely on something else to do that all the time, you can do that without AI.
Yeah, right. I think that's really kind of the lever, right? Is how do you use it to help yourself to be better in the workplace, to think better, to find the information so that you can make better decisions more quickly, right?
The first question I ever ask anybody in coaching is, what is your definition of success? What does that mean to you? And
Yeah.
if success means that you get AI to write all your reports and you get out of work at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, then you've achieved success. But that's not going to really get you. You got to be realistic at where you are, who you are, what you want out of life, and how to get it. And AI is just another way to do it.
I totally agree. Although getting out of work at 3 o'clock and, depending on what stage of life you are, if you have kids, that's great. But if you can get out at 3 o'clock, have seen and made all of the big important decisions by that time, because you have all of that analysis, that
Mhm.
data, so that you don't have to go looking for all of it. You don't have to figure it all out. Like,
Yep.
where do I get it? How do I, see and understand it? Then that again that's the superpower, right? It makes it so much more efficient for us.
You know, what's really interesting, you jogged that in my memory, is like AI sees patterns. It's really, really good at patterns for that. And when you are looking at making decisions about a system, you can have AI do a lot of analysis for you, but unless you have the judgment and understand the system, you're not going to improve it. But
Exactly.
it can do all the background work for you, and you'll get how many times as a data analyst when I was at IBM did I see people? I mean, they have mountains of data, but they have no idea what to use. I mean, an AI churns through that and pull. How many times do you take, like, the transcript from a meeting and it pulls out the action items and how much does that save you? So
Exactly.
it's using it for the things it's good at and using your brain for the things your brain is good at.
We jumped right into the conversation, but we really missed an important part of your story, which is you spent years in technology, you became a CIO, and then you transitioned into coaching. How does that happen?
Interesting. It happens because I have either participated, used coaching all of my career. Early on in IBM, I was struggling and blaming everybody on for my failures. And I don't even remember how I did it, but I went out and hired a coach on my
Mhm.
own outside of business. And she pulled me around and turned me around, and it was fantastic. I mean, I never would have achieved any kind of success without that. I probably would have just quit and moved on to something else. But then I used coaching a lot. I mean, obviously as a manager and a leader, and when I was a CIO, I put a couple of my execs or my really up and coming high potential folks through sessions with an external coach, and they just took off. So I see it. I see the value of the coaching, and especially when you're in a company, getting that external view of a coach
Yeah.
that's not within your company to, give you that perspective in that sense was just unbelievably important to me. And so when I retired, I was approached by the company that I'd used before, and they asked me to coach. So went
Oh,
through all the training and all that good stuff. And yeah, months later, I emerged as a coach.
I mean, that's fantastic. And actually, I see that pretty often where the people who become coaches had such a great experience being
Yeah.
coached, and then they saw that potential to be able to, after they've kind of like at the end of your career phase one, you decided, what do I do next? Someone approaches you and like, what about this? What about coaching? So, how long have you been coaching now?
I've been coaching for, well, since I think since 21. So I've been coaching for 4 years now.
And I think like during that time, I think that's when I saw the biggest increase in coaches or people becoming coaches. So for you, as you got into becoming a coach, let me ask you this question because I think a lot of people don't really recognize this. When you become a coach, because you're operating as a solo LLC, right? As a solo business. Most coaches who walk into this, they're not thinking like, I'm now a small business owner, I'm a solopreneur. They kind of just think, I'm just going to start coaching and helping people. What was your thinking when you came into coaching?
That was exactly it. I thought all I'm going to do is just say, okay, I'm coaching now. And I'd have a bunch of people say, which obviously doesn't happen. It's really strange. I'm just sitting here. I retired in March of 2020. I started coaching right after that. So it was 2020 when I started coaching. I really thought I was just so naive. I hadn't done anything like this at all. And I just figured that was what it was going to be. But to me, it is so much more. I went through everything. I went through video training. I went through all the LinkedIn stuff. I went through all of the, coaching and all of that stuff to get better at coaching and better at getting clients. And I just learned that you have to construct a business based on your personality and who you are. It's just exactly what I would tell somebody else. And I'm
Yeah.
not a person who's going to get out there on LinkedIn and just sell, 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 sell.
Yeah.
I've built a solid and continual reputation, and although unfortunately I'm a contractor with a firm, so I can't go back to the companies that I've worked with, unfortunately, because they're nice companies.
Mm.
But people tell other people and friends of other people. And honestly, this kind of thing, coaching is so trust based. Everybody's a coach now, and there are some really awful coaches and really bad people who will take your money for no reason and give
Mm.
you nothing. So that trust, and I honestly, I just relaxed. And the minute I relaxed, I started just not doing all that stuff last year, and everything
Mm.
started happening.
That's interesting. I wonder if there was a convergence of things because, there's that cold start, like you have to set up the foundation and then you have to do enough work so that there's a critical mass of people who really know you and then the work starts to come in. So I wonder if there was a convergence of you'd spent 4 years coaching, building your reputation, and then you decided, let's just relax and have fun with it. So I'm curious if there was a convergence in that timing. But I also think one of the things, like what you said, is coaching is so trust based, right? Because you're spending time, the leader has to be open and vulnerable with you with, some difficult things sometimes, right? Because it's not
Yeah,
always just, how do I become a better communicator? Sometimes it's, I'm having this problem at home and it's impacting me at work. How do I deal with this? So that trust is hard earned. And I see, and in the conversations I've had, when you have people referring you, right? That person who refers you, there's a level of trust that gets transferred from referrer. And so it makes it easier when you have that conversation, right?
exactly. It doesn't always work. I mean, I've had conversations with people that it just didn't click with us, and we knew it wasn't going to happen, and we weren't going to work forward as a coach. And you got to be able to understand and recognize that as well. You think, oh, I'm a coach, I can talk to anybody, and it feels like a personal blow if you don't click with someone, but it just doesn't happen all the time.
Mhm.
So you got to be able to relax and do that too. And I think there's a certain kind of person maybe or type of person that you get with word of mouth and they start to get comfortable with that, and so IT execs just, as a group, they're more comfortable that way. It's interesting, and I think you're right though, because I was not comfortable with myself. While I was comfortable with myself as a coach, I was not at all comfortable as a salesperson,
Mm.
and I had to go through a number of personalities and changes trying to find exactly who I am in that milieu. And I think the reason it's successful now is, I hate the word authentic, but I am coming across as authentic more because I'm relaxed and I'm doing something that's in my character.
One coach, Eileen, she was a guest a couple of episodes back. She terms it as needy is creepy, where when you kind of come off stiff or you're not really feeling authentic, like it comes across even in a video call. And so people are turned off by that, honestly, right? And I think most coaches are subject matter experts in the first half of their world of their work, right? And so
Right.
when they're coming into becoming a coach, owning a business, becoming the salesperson, right? It's something they're very uncomfortable with most of the time. Most coaches I've talked to, I mean, it sounds like it's similar experiences, uncomfortable with sales, uncomfortable with like the idea of marketing. And so it's just difficult.
It's not your profession. If you're a company, you've got the marketing department to do it for you. You got a sales guy to pick it up for you. You're doing the whole thing, and it's not necessarily what you want to be doing. And I hear so many coaches. You see it on the social media all the time. It's like, I just want to coach. I don't want to sell. Well, okay. You still got to sell either. And that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons I'm kind of working with this on the side with this company, because they're doing the marketing for those clients. So I've got
Mhm.
some clients coming from them. I'm working for them on a contract basis. I'm still free
Mhm.
to get my own. But so I've got a little bit of
Yeah.
both. But I had to learn sales, and you don't really understand how important that is. And I went through so many iterations of people telling me, do this, do that, do this, do that, until I finally got to where, oh, this is how I feel comfortable selling something.
It
So.
takes time to figure that out, I think, because like any other skill, right? You just gotta feel comfortable, feel confident, and then once you have enough experience, it gets easier. Honestly, it's like me on this podcast. The first episodes are really rough. I look back at it, I have a hard time watching it, and I'm hoping and praying as I do more, it's getting better.
One of the first things I didn't grow up with video. I mean, my generation, our family didn't even have a movie camera. There's nothing, no videos of me running around. And I signed up with a company where they would get on for an hour and they would blast me with questions and do these videos. And like you said, it's so cringeworthy at the start. And I would almost throw up before I came in to do it and everything. And at the end, I'm like, I can stand up and do a 5-minute video now on anything, and it doesn't bother me. So it's
Yeah.
just doing it and doing it and doing it.
Yeah, it's putting the reps in, right? The more you do it, the more you realize, oh, it's not really that bad. You start to get a feel for it, to get a flow for it. I mean, like in sports, right? Very few people are just amazing at the beginning. But again, those are few and far between. And even you think about the people like Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, these athletes, they didn't wake up and just become the top. They spent the time and the effort to get there. And a lot of coaches spend a lot of time on the coaching, getting good at the coaching. You need to also spend time on building your business. And that is often the most unattractive part of the coaching business because you just don't like it.
And if you don't, I mean, there are platforms and there are ways, like I have this company that's hired me. So, you
Mhm.
can do that if you want to. You don't have to be the entrepreneur and do it, but it's easier. And, there are so many bad people out there trying to be coaches, and it's very hard to understand who's a good coach.
Mm.
Who do I call up? If I was going to get a coach right now, I don't know what I would do. It would be very interesting how I would select a coach or how I would find one. I know that International Coaching Federation, which is really the
Yeah.
only governing body there is, they have local chapters and I go to the meetings and stuff. And that's a good way to meet people and get out there. And, we're doing it the thing where they did pro bono coaching for a
Mhm.
group. And so everybody, so those are ways to get your name out there and get your word. Do what you love and
Yeah.
then find ways to manipulate other people into doing the sales for you.
I think there are a few ways to do marketing and sales, but I think that by far, right, is the best way because there's that trust in the system. The more conversations I have, it's okay, you can do the referrals. The problem with referrals is the cycle of up and down, feast or famine, right? Because when you're not busy, you spend lots of time trying to network and build that up. And then when you get busy, you stop doing that, and then eventually the work drops off. And so the people who have been able to be successful and grow the fastest are the ones that have been able to do both continually,
Yeah.
right? Because they systematize, they give themselves a goal of every 2 weeks, every week, whatever. I'm going to connect with this many people, check, check, check. And because they do it consistently, they are able to continually grow their business consistently, right? Well, they have a wait list, which
Yeah.
is
That's what you want. You want a wait list.
right. But most coaches don't have that.
And it's hard. I mean, with a market that's glutted, and I think a lot of people are kind of maybe this big, trough will, and there'll be an even number of people who will do it, and that's we can understand it. I think there's a difference too. One thing I tell you, I have a way different experience selling to a company than to a person.
Mhm.
I'm much more familiar and capable as an IBM consultant of going in and selling to a board of directors than I am standing there selling something to you. It feels
Mm.
different. And a way to coach and to do that is to sell your services to a company. That's how I've gotten most of my referrals through people that I know here in town, through
Mhm.
company who are
Yeah.
looking for someone to coach their people. And if you get a company paying for the
Yeah.
coaching, you're getting a lot better deal than if you have an individual. I mean, individuals don't have a lot of money to spend on coaching services, whereas
Yeah.
companies, it's nothing.
Yeah.
So, and I would definitely recommend that as a way to start marketing, especially if you have a lot of connections and you know people and you're comfortable working in a business
Mhm.
environment.
I'd like to kind of delve into that just a little bit. The difference
Mhm.
between having that conversation with a business versus an individual, right? Cash flow, companies do have the money versus individuals don't necessarily have access to that same amount of money, or maybe they can't write it off as a tax deductible line
Exactly.
item. But what is it about the decision making process, right? Because I do think individuals and businesses think about that decision differently.
That's interesting because if I have a appointment with a law firm and I go in there and talk to the partners and I've sold myself to everybody in that room,
Mm.
they know then and feel confident in me and they know then and feel confident that I can address their people's concerns. If I'm there with just one person, I got to understand that person immediately. I've got to find out their levers. If I'm trying to sell to you in a conversation, I got to be really focused on you at that
Mm.
moment. And there's a lot more variables. I don't know. I think it's harder for some people. Some people sell person to person a lot more easily.
Well, I was listening to somebody, a YouTuber, talking about, building businesses because he went from just creating content to building businesses. And one of the things he was saying was that in terms of the decision making process between B2B and B2C, is that for B2C, for you to sell to an individual, that individual has emotions. They've got all these other things going on in the decision-making process. For a business, it's much more of a logical decision, right? It's
Right.
they remove more of the doubts or the what ifs or like the emotional part of it and we're looking at this person as a vendor. Do they have a track record? Do they have the experience? Do they have the credibility? Do we believe that they can do what we're asking? Whereas an individual, I think the calculus is a little bit different, right?
I think that the calculus is, do they have, you're asking the same thing. Do they have the track record? Do they have the skills? Do they have that? But when you're selling to a person, it's so much more visceral and you're selling to something very valuable to that person. It's more
Yeah.
like a doctor almost, a lawyer. So it's more of a closer connection making with that person. And you're right up in front selling to that person. And you may do that 100 times before you land one client, right?
Mm,
And you're constantly adapting to each of those people, and you have to. If I go into a
mm.
business, I'm talking in an environment that I'm familiar. I'm talking to people who pretty much already know what they want, know what to expect out of me. There's not as much of that personal angst going on. It's more of a process. But they still have to trust me. I mean, they still have to find that trust. But
But I mean, you're talking to businesses that already have some connection too, correct?
mhm,
Somebody has kind
correct.
of either given you an intro or maybe you know somebody on the board. So I think the
That helps.
question is then, well, again, it's the referral, right? Like somebody is there that can basically vouch for you, right? Who transfers the trust that they have people have in them to you. I guess like with a board, you have a higher chance of somebody sticking up for you, right?
Yeah,
Versus if you have a one-to-one conversation with someone who's never met you, who's sticking up for you in that conversation.
nobody. You're on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah, each person wants to be sold to differently, and people are. That's interesting how you mentioned that. Companies are used to being sold to. They know when I'm coming in with a pitch. I'm going to do a
Yeah.
proposal. I'm going to walk in there, and it's going to be the same as they've seen it a million times before. With a person looking for a coach, it's a much more personal, visceral. Yeah,
Maybe it's more akin to like someone looking for a psychologist. Obviously, like as a coach, you're not necessarily selling yourself as a psychologist, although there are psychologists who become coaches and can do both. But I think it's much more of that because you need to have a personal, emotional connection with that person, right?
yeah.
That's interesting.
It is interesting. I have found so many people, I've been on so many bad calls with people that are trying to sell me something, and the desperation comes through.
Mm,
And the advice that somebody gave somebody in sales school was to always close on the first call is the worst thing
uh-huh.
I've ever heard in this situation, because I've had people saying, if you sign right now, it's like half price or
Yeah.
something like that. And you're trying to force someone in. This is a hard decision to make, and people don't sign up on that first call. But you got to give people in the coaching, you got to be a little more relaxed about it than that hard sell.
Yeah. I think people give in to the FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. It's like, oh, it's 50% off if I do it right now. When will that deal ever come back? There is some of that. But I think now there's a bigger difference now than there was even 10 years ago, where we as a society have become so much more used to, we're desensitized to these things now because we have so much more exposure to it. I would say even on LinkedIn, I would say you probably have received the messages selling services, right? There are a few coaches I've talked to who haven't had at least one of those messages, which is it's fine because people have a service they're trying to sell it, but we've gotten so used to it that it's like okay, delete, 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 because you know what they're trying to do, and so I think those tactics of try to sell on that first call it doesn't work as well because again we're used to it. We know well, maybe you're going to give me a 50% discount now, but if you can give it to me today, you could probably give it to me in a week or a month, right? And
Right.
or it's like you can do this, but maybe I can find somebody else who can do it too for that price. So it's just like as you say, it doesn't really work now because for a variety of reasons.
If you were going to look for a coach right now, you decided you really wanted to take on something that you haven't done before, how would you find a coach?
That's really hard for me because I'm talking to so many coaches, so many wonderful, like amazing coaches. I think one would definitely be the experience that they've had because for me, I wouldn't look for somebody with a CFO background. Like I would definitely look for somebody. been working as a top level C-suite corporate executive or as a who's owned their own businesses as a solopreneur. I basically run a solo enterprise. I work with VAs, but it's basically me because I want to have somebody who's had that experience because they know what I'm walking through now. Although like the problems I have as a person, a coach can help me through any of that. But if I find a coach who's been in my seat, who's walked this path before me, then I get that benefit of they can help me through the decision making processes or give me advice as they've been through that experience and challenge, right? So there's the wisdom of the years that they've had that I don't have to like hit my head against and
Yeah.
try to figure it out on my own, right? You didn't become a coach to be a marketer. But if you want to build a sustainable business, you need a system that works for you while you're coaching. Coach Ops is designed to help you go from unpredictable referrals to a reliable marketing system without it feeling pushy or salesy. If you're ready to build something systematic, visit kyber5.com/coach ops.
That's interesting because in coaching, and I try to make this really, really clear to people, and I don't think people really understand it. There's coaching, there's mentoring, and then there's consulting, right?
Yeah.
And theoretically, when you go through coaching class, theoretically, I could coach you on anything. It's a matter of bringing out what you're talking about and what you're thinking and asking leading questions and, okay,
Yeah.
theoretically. But I find that in actuality, most of my coaching is probably 50% mentoring, 50% coaching. And once in a while, I'll do consulting. I mean, I've done a few last minute presentations with people. So, that's consulting is where you're actually doing the work for the person. And so I have done that as well. But you're looking for that mentor. I mean, if you're really looking for just a coach, anybody who has a
Yeah.
sense of listening and active listening, who can draw things out from you, can do a good job.
And I think that's the truth is like, and that's why for you, right, you focus on IT executives. IT executives will more likely feel more comfortable with you versus somebody who was in marketing or finance because your experience. And not that you guys would coach, yeah, your coaching part of it would be very similar, right? Assuming they have same skills, but your experience and your history adds to that. And it's just like the added bonus of that, right? It's the add-on.
You feel, yeah, I've been there. I know what an IT exec feels. I know what they're up against. Yeah, a lot of that stuff, I've been there, done that. It's kind of a shortcut, if you will, to where we're going. It's a shortcut. But
Yeah.
it's the question when everybody coach at some point in any coaching thing, somebody will ask me, what would you do in that situation? And I'm like,
Mm,
that's the question. I don't want to answer that one. I
mhm,
want to have them figure out, what do you think I would do? Or I don't want to tell people what to do in a
mhm,
particular situation. There's another thing we brought up, coaching for a company instead of coaching for an individual. I'm
mhm,
being paid by a company. I've been in the situation a couple times where the person I'm coaching, really the best answer was for them to leave the company. And so who am I getting paid by? Who am I serving here? I'm serving the greater good because we're deciding, I'm okay, if that person's really not that good for that company, they should go.
yeah,
So, and we've had those frank conversations, but that's the kind of thing, another thing you got to think about. Who's paying your money?
yeah. Who's your client, right? That's hard, right?
I've sat down with a sponsor and I've told him, listen, here's the thing. This woman was not, there was a problem. She knew there was a problem. We've talked through all this and
Mm.
she's arrived at this decision. And he's like, you're right. It was the decision we need to come to. So you just it's hard.
Where you are, like the way you have your business set up, you work with a company that brings you clients, you run your own and you find your own clients. How do you balance between those responsibilities? Like potential for conflict is there, like, right? If you had a client who just wants to work with you or they kind of came through that other company, like how do you balance that? But for you also, like, is this the kind of business that you wanted to build? Did you want to rely on somebody else? Or do you eventually just want to be able to just run on your own?
Interesting. Well, one thing to remember is I am retired and I'm not reliant on this income. So I can pretty much do what I want and that makes me happy. So I do enjoy the group that I'm working with is fantastic. I have a long-term relationship with them. I trust them. The only drawback is they are Fortune 500 companies and every one that I coach with, I can't go back, unless it's through them.
Mm.
So it's an issue, but it hasn't been that major of a deal. But It's a balance, and you just gotta decide, and it's taken me like 5 years to get to this perfect balance, to where I know
Mm.
first I thought, "I want 15 clients. I wanna have 15 clients and a waiting list going on." I don't wanna do that. So, I finally decided I don't want that many clients. When it gets to be, "Oh, I gotta be on this call with this person," then you know you got too many clients. So, yeah, I wanna keep it to a level that's doable for me without burnout, because that's another thing. Shoot, I mean, you can burn out so easily.
Right. And you're retired, right? As you said. So why do you want to do something that's burning you out, that's killing your energy? What is your number right now? How many people are you coaching? What's that number for you?
My max is 8 to 10. I've got 6 right now. It's been kinda low with the holidays, but I can take on a few more, but I don't wanna do more than 10. I absolutely
Yeah.
cannot. So,
Yeah.
you've gotta
Yeah.
be fresh. And sit down and kinda do a little 10-minute meditation before I get on with anybody. You gotta be fresh in there. If you're, like, hassled and you're sitting down, you go, "What?"
Yeah.
People can tell.
You have to, when you walk into that, you have to like let go of everything else that you've been dealing with too, right? If you want to serve your client the best. And if you're doing too many client, stressful on its own, right?
Can't remember, like, what was their problem. I don't remember. That's
Yeah.
bad. Very, very bad.
I find that for most coaches, the one to one is probably about like 8 to 12, like if they're coaching individuals. More than that becomes harder to manage. What was their problem? I wonder, because you're also working within inside businesses, do any team coaching as well? Or is it just one to one?
Yeah, it has been one-to-one so far. I would love to do team coaching. I'd love to do group coaching. There's a certification in that I would like to get. I have not ever done that, so I don't know
Mm.
what it would be like. So, I mean, I've
Okay.
been part of those sessions, but yeah, it's a whole different skill.
I've had a lot of experience in the team coaching certification trainings, and I know how they kind of function and work. And a lot of times it's actually a little bit easier,
Is
truthfully.
it?
Yeah, because a lot of team coaching programs work is you facilitate conversations. You will often talk through like what are the big problems the team is facing, and kind of show them how to coach each other, coach themselves. And so instead of spending a lot of time one to one with 5 or 10 individuals, you spend an hour or 2 hours kind of facilitating, and then they kind of work together to coach themselves.
Like what I did every day in my job when I was working as a leader,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
That's what we do. As a CIO, I came into the most dysfunctional team on the planet, and we started by having a lot of those open coaching sessions. I know how it is. Yeah.
So I imagine if you got into that, it'll feel pretty natural for you.
Okay. Good. I will take it on now. Thank you. That was my step that I hadn't taken
Yeah.
yet.
I mean, the other benefit of team coaching as well is it can often be the way you balance it, right? Like you receive less money per head, but per hour you end up earning
Right.
more.
Right. Wow.
And so it's often what I see. It's coaches do one to one first, they get comfortable with that, and then what's next, and that's often team coaching.
Interesting. Wow. I remember how scared I was before my first coaching. Do you remember your first time you ever did a coaching engagement? Gosh, and how scared you were.
So I don't actually call myself a coach. I don't really coach. So I spent 12 years in the coaching industry doing support, helping with certifications, running certification programs, and then doing a lot of the background operations and systems. And then I spent the last few years in more of operations and product. And I always kind of felt, so I'm almost 40 now. So when I got into the coaching industry, I felt like too young. Who wants to work with someone who is younger than me? I've always looked kind of young as well.
Yeah, that's
So
interesting. I didn't think about that.
so I've always thought if I started coaching, I'll wait until maybe 40, mid 40s to really call myself a coach and just do that. So my background aside is when I was 18, I got licensed as a senior in high school to sell life insurance. Exactly, right? Would you buy life insurance from an 18-year-old?
No.
Exactly. That was my experience, is like it didn't matter if I was licensed to do it, if I understood all of the ins and outs. There's a lot of level of credibility and trust that's just not there. That was kind of my personal experience that said, I think I could actually do really well. And I've had that comment before, but I've just decided I've got other things I can do. Eventually, this will be when I want to do this, I think I can take off with it.
That's interesting. That really is. Wow. There is a need. There's a lot of coaching platforms out there, but there's a need for one that's really easy to use and good.
I am actually working on that.
But there's a ton of them out there, and they're not really all that great. So
So it's interesting, like over the holiday break, I vibe coded a new project management tool for myself.
you're crazy.
But yeah, it's fun. Like I realized over the last few years, like I really love like product development. Like I always loved Legos and I realized I love the act of creation. And building applications is like Lego blocks. You're building something, you're seeing something and you're building it. And so like with the business that I'm building as well, it's very much the same. And so it's been fun. And like with again, coming back to AI, like I can think through and create a PRD, a few sessions, and then within probably less than 2 hours. And now with all of the AI tools that can do front end, back end development, as long as you have a clear picture of what you're trying to achieve,
Trying to do. That's the problem. Yeah.
yeah. And then the
Okay.
UI and the UX, and that's through prototyping and trial and error. But you've got your functionality working. So it's been really cool. I actually ended up doing 3 apps over 3 weeks.
Really? Okay, so these platforms are much better than when I was using Visual Basic, right?
Yeah. Well, so the platforms themselves are haven't necessarily changed. It's the ability to leverage an AI tool that if you give them the specific outcomes you're looking for, it
You can
can
just do it,
reason through, yeah, how to
figure
do
out
that.
how to do it.
Best
Oh
practice,
my,
right?
that's where I was so good at the reasoning and figuring things out. It was the details of getting the programming right that I just couldn't handle. See, I would have been brilliant. You know what
Yeah.
my big
So
thing is now? The big gap in what we need. I have been getting into volunteer activities, and there are many, many senior people in volunteer activities. And
mhm.
have you ever tried to keep 50 older adults communicating together using a single? It's impossible. They don't use email. They lose their emails in their inbox. How do I? Texting is the only universal platform I've found. And I need to find a way to communicate in a non technical way to a bunch of people really quickly. And I cannot do it, and it's driving me crazy.
Well, communicating with 50 people in general is difficult because you never know if did they all read it, who's read it, what are they going to follow through and listen to what was said or whatever. But chat is the easiest way because they've already got that built in. That's why Facebook groups worked or work so well because everyone had or has Facebook. I don't know about today, but like
I
2
don't
years
use
ago,
Facebook.
everybody,
Nobody uses Facebook now.
yeah, it's so like 2 years ago everybody was on Facebook, right?
Right.
So Facebook groups blew up. Now I feel like people are leaving and looking for the next thing. But if you can find the platform that people are all on, it
Only
just
common denominator I found is SMS. Yeah,
mhm.
texting. That's it.
I think internationally it's WhatsApp, right? Even though people have the school groups or the different platforms, you have group communication, still people are moved to using WhatsApp groups because, well, it was secure, different conversation, but
Yeah.
pretty much everybody had it. It's pretty ubiquitous. It's really well known. It crossed all the international borders. Different countries have their different apps, but WhatsApp from what I've seen from the people I've spoken with globally, it's WhatsApp, right?
Yeah, it's not that big a deal here. I can't even think of a single person in my either one of my clubs that would even know what it was. I'm serious. So I
Mm,
live in rural Missouri, and it's like we're talking the lowest common denominator.
yeah.
So I don't know. I'll get there. I'm going to figure this out.
I mean, if you could send it through like an SMS message to a link to download an app, but I would assume you have people on different platforms, so that doesn't work, right? And then email doesn't work. That's a hard one.
I know. I've been looking. What I want, all I need to do, here's a simple problem I have right now. I have a nominating committee for officers for a group of 10 people. I have to get them all together. I have to tell them what to do. The text has worked pretty well for that, but I
Mhm,
have a set of action items send to
mhm.
these people. But then it's just, like you said, it's willy nilly whether they read them or whether they read the whole thing or whether they misread it or whether and I'm going to solve it.
I would try to get everybody on one communication tool, like
Yeah, I got to find
Telegram,
one thing.
WhatsApp, yeah. And then at least you can see in most of those tools like how many people have read it. I don't know if you can run polls in WhatsApp now. There are some tools you can
I
like
don't know.
run polls or questionnaires.
That's true. That's a thought.
So I would probably anyways, we'll
This is
take this out of the podcast,
yeah,
but
sorry.
you have to find some tool where you can track like have I read this or do a poll or else you have to do like a link out to a site to do the follow-up, which might be easier. You just have one channel for communication, so WhatsApp or Telegram they can click on and take action on a web page where they put in their email or, and then whatever the selection is.
I'll think through it. Anyway, that's an aside, but thank you.
Well, I guess we should kind of start to bring it to a close. So, Jane, before I close, and this is a question, I have a couple of questions I ask for coaches before the end of a conversation. And one of them is, what have you learned about yourself through this process of becoming a coach and building your coaching business?
Oh, that's a good one. This is a good time to ask me because I'm finally feeling like I'm settling down. What I have learned is that, and I was just thinking about this yesterday, when you're in the rat race, my entire life, my mom was a teacher, my dad was a corporate engineer. When you've spent this entire life with this focus on you've got to join a corporation, you got to do this thing, you've got to have this job, you got to make these. I never had bad expectations put on me, but everything around your society is gearing you towards doing that job, being successful in that job, then you retire. And we don't even look at that. And when people are trying to reinvent themselves, there's a whole bunch of people trying to reinvent themselves. Everybody wants to tell you what to do. And I think the biggest thing to do is push yourself, take on things that you've never done before, try
Mm,
it, see if it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
yeah.
But at all times, just get off the rat race, get off the hamster wheel, and do what you really want to do. And that's the hardest thing for me to learn was what
Mm,
do you want to do? It sounds like a simple question, but
mm,
it's not.
yeah.
And it's the first question I ask all my coaching people, and it's the one I took me 5 years really to answer for myself.
So, what is it that you want to do?
What I want to do is take all, I always, when everybody asks me when I retired, I always say I graduated instead of retired. And it's a Freudian slip. I figure, to me, I feel like I've taken all of this time. My job and my career did so much for me personally. I was shy. I couldn't talk to anybody. The things and the skills that I learned working at IBM and then as a CIO in higher ed were things I never would have learned anywhere else. It was hard,
Yeah.
it was challenging, every day was a challenge, but to me, it set me up for doing what I'm doing now. I know how to lead people. I'm leading volunteer groups. I know how to coach now because I have the background in all that coaching. I'm doing
Mm,
what I love in gardening and conservation, and I'm being able to do all these fun things. But I feel like everything I did was kind of a prep for this is your next show. This is the show,
mm,
folks. And so all the tools that I've learned, I don't feel like I'm done. I mean, that job at IBM set myself was hard, but it wasn't
mhm.
the end when I walked away from it. It was taking what I learned from that and going on to the next step.
Yeah.
That's hard. It's a hard thing to learn. And when you suddenly go from Saturday and Sunday is the only day I've got to do the things I want to do to I can do it every day, Saturday and Sunday, that's when you really figure out what you really want to do and what you want to spend your
Yeah.
time on. That was my lesson.
That's a really good point, and we can talk more about it afterwards. And this is the last question that I'll ask. What is one piece of advice that you'd give somebody who's just beginning their coaching journey now?
Number one, get credentialed, do the work, go as far as you can in the credentialing and put in that good work. And then, for me, it was finding not a coach, but a mentor, someone who I could really trust, who kind of walked me down and helped me. I'll never forget that day when I was saying, I don't know anybody. And they said, you know more people than you think you do.
Mm,
And I started realizing that, that was what really getting that mentor and getting someone to actually help me start. But get their credentials. Don't just say you're a coach and hang up your shingle.
yeah, unfortunately, that happens often, but there are more, things like the ICF. There are a few other ones internationally, and so it does, yeah, because I mean, coaching is kind of like the Wild West. You can be coaching for anything. So, Jane, I've really appreciated and enjoyed this conversation. This has been a lot of fun for me, so thank you very much. If anybody wanted to get in contact with you, to work with you, or, how could they do that?
I'm on LinkedIn, Jane Parker Williams. You can find me there. I also have a company called Find Your Fire Coach. You can find me at that website. And I'm starting a new venture called Make Working Work. I have that website as well. And that's about really geared towards really helping people in a hybrid environment work better and smarter.
Mm.
So, all of those things make working work, find your fire coach, and you can find me on LinkedIn.
Jane, thank you
Awesome.
so much. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate it.
You're fantastic. And I just wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Want to stop guessing and start building a marketing system that actually fills your calendar? Head to kyber5.com/coachops and let's get systematic. That's it for today's episode. I hope you grabbed something useful you can actually apply in your business. If you did, leave a comment or share it with a friend. And hit subscribe if you haven't already. I'll catch you next week.